Good morning. Welcome to today. I don't know about you, but I'm very glad to be here. So I have a little collection of readings today that I think the flip book has perfectly titled, which is Enjoy the Journey. I have really begun to enjoy this journey in a whole new way, I have to say, and a fun and delicious excitement is presenting itself all over the place. Yesterday, I had the most fun adventure with my hubby. We ended up at a penny arcade. I got this cool flower ring. I'm always surrounded by flowers. It's an incredible memory. These really fun opal floating earrings. We didn't even know there was going to be an art festival there. We just felt called to go there, played the penny arcades. Turns out it just became such a delightful mix of fun. I don't think I've had that much good, clean, hilarious fun in so long. And I mean, I think there's something like we think, I don't know what we think about fun. You got to go somewhere, you got to take something, you got to do something. And it's a process that just has to happen. And there's a piece of it that's a part of this. You know, I was thinking about the reading I dug into yesterday about, you know, as a man thinketh, and how we're thinking and what we believe. So beliefs are just thoughts we keep thinking, but we're all doing this. We're thinking, it becomes a belief, and I get evidence of it. And we're so unaware of the process of what's happening that we're constantly asking, and that it's constantly being delivered. And if we don't get aware of what we're asking for and what's being received, that we're not conscious about our life, and we have so much less power than we could have to enjoy. So let's dig into enjoying the journey a little bit here. All right, so the flip book has 4 quotes. First quote is, what is it about you physical creatures that makes you believe that you must justify your existence? Is that not what makes you clamor and climb and struggle so hard? As if someone else is taking score, and if you are not moving far enough, fast enough, then you'll be judged. And we do kind of judge each other, right? We really, like, we give accolades to people who are getting far and climbing that ladder and stuff, but who's the one that's suffering? I mean, what it takes, I spent so much of my life working so hard to get somewhere, and it wasn't satisfying even when I got there because you're too tired to enjoy it. But I really did think that's how we got things done. I really thought that's what it was about, you know, a notch in my belt. But now I'm discovering a different way of doing it. So it says, and we say there's none of that. You don't have to justify your existence. Being here justifies your experience. And the more I study this, the more I realize how I always want to justify or put a disclaimer. And I'm actively working hard to stop feeling a need to justify why I'm here or add disclaimers about the way that I am, and just learn to step into it and own it and be like, no, I'm just going to say this, and I don't have to make excuses or pretend that, you know, I deserve this in some way, the justification and the disclaimers. So, second quote, there's a tendency to feel yourself rushed. In other words, we have very little time for this. And that, above all things, takes the joy out of your journey, doesn't it? When you have to do something with your attention upon the pressure of time, rather than enjoying the delicious creativity of the project, we say it is of little value to create anything under those conditions. Time scarcity is a huge conversation with us right now. And the more things we seem to have to save us time, the less time we seem to have. Have you noticed that? Isn't that strange? Like, everything's built around convenience and speed, and everyone's driving 1,000,000 miles an hour, and yet we don't have any more time for ourselves. We're not having more time for enjoyment. So what's all this rushing around about? What's all this convenience about? And I have to laugh at this quote specifically for me, because even doing this, which is something I love and I consider a creative project, I'll watch the timer at the top of the screen and be like, oh, it's getting to be too long. And then I put pressure on myself about the amount of time, and then it sucks the joy right out of it, and probably the power of the message to a certain extent. So I have to laugh, because even in that, because I've had a scarcity time conversation for a long time, when I was working so much and doing so much, now I got to work out and trying to fit everything in, I felt like there was never enough time. And I've come a long way with that. But even now, when I have plenty of time for everything, I'm still finding a way to create a time scarcity conversation for myself. Even now, I could be open that I'm supposed to go have an adventure today, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this taking too long? Maybe I need to go get to that. And it creates a conflict of energy. So I'm pulling in one way, I really want to do this. Because if I go do the adventure and don't do this, I'm going to be really sad that this isn't done because I love this. But while I'm doing this, I'm thinking about that, and it's creating like a conflict all the time. And I think so often we're living with that, whereas if I'm doing one thing, I feel like I should be doing another thing. If I'm doing that thing, I feel like I should be doing the other thing. And the later reading, I'll get into it a little bit more, but I think it's such an important conversation for learning to focus where we are and do fully where we are, because then our energy is 100% committed to what we're doing, and our results will be totally different. And obviously with creativity, I mean, you want to be able to flow fully. And when you're a two-headed monster and one's going this direction and one's going that direction, it's creating a pulling, and you just can't get the same power as if you're moving in the same direction and focusing. Third quote, enjoy the journey. And if it isn't created today, it's all right. If it isn't created tomorrow, it's all right. Don't become so fixated upon your ending places that you run through life with your tongue hanging out. Because when you're feeling the lack of time or the pressure of time, then there is no value. So literally, all these things I've done, like there's literally no value. I find that a little disheartening for some of the things I've done, since I've done a lot of things under the pressure of time. So it's definitely an important place for me to look at relaxing and really owning where I am. And it makes me remember when I went to the mountains a few days ago. It's kind of hilarious because on the way up to the mountains and on the way back, the driving is so intense. You know, I'm lollygagging, I'm going the speed limit, but I'm looking at the mountains, especially now I'm focusing, you know, the houses, and it's beautiful, and really trying to enjoy the experience. And I'm noticing people just flying by me. I keep having to pull off the road to let people around me. And I'm like, wow, even here, when everyone's coming up to the mountains to relax, and a lot of them I recognized from where I was, they were up there, they're kayaking, they're fishing and relaxing. But I realized they don't realize that the drive up and the drive back is part of the journey of relaxation. They're obviously like, I got to get there, then I'm going to relax, then I got to get home, because it's all about the destination, the ending place. Whereas that drive to and from can be just as much a part of the relaxation process, but we're missing that. We're missing that so much in life. The waiting in the line, the experiences that we're trying to eliminate so we have more time could be places where we really create more space. And how do we do that? Okay, so I felt drawn to open this book. I haven't opened this in a while. It has dated readings. Simple Abundance, it's a day book of comfort and joy by Sarah Brethnock. I did this for a while back in the day, and I was like, you know, I really want to see today's reading. And this is today's reading, which seems apropos. You can let me know what you think. It says, September 3rd, scrambled or fried? At work, you think of the children you've left at home. At home, you think of the work you've left unfinished. Such a struggle is unleashed within yourself. Your heart is rent. That's a quote by Golda Meir. She was, I think, the Prime Minister of Israel, the only female Prime Minister of Israel. So, more women than you realize have a secret fantasy that has absolutely nothing to do with erotica. But in its own way, it focuses on the forbidden. I call this fantasy scrambled or fried. One more perfectly normal day of incessant demands, neglected children, and unfinished work, and you feel you can't take it anymore. An overwhelming impulse to disappear without a trace comes over you. I had this very intensely for a while. Methodically, you withdraw all the cash you can from your bank account. Credit cards can be traced. Pack a small suitcase, head for the bus terminal, and begin life all over again as a waitress in a diner somewhere out west. And what fascinates me about this is when I was in the big, corporate professional game, every time we'd go out to eat, my bosses or mentors or whoever was with me, we'd get sandwiches, for example. And I remember especially The one gentleman would always say, I would give anything just to be that guy making sandwiches. I just want to be making sandwiches like that guy. And I started to really get that. And of course I had the freedom. I kind of did do that. And I got why it's so nice. But it's interesting that here are people making all this money, doing all this big stuff. And frequently they're looking at people being like, I just want to be a waitress or sandwich maker or something to this, right? In this fantasy, some women take their children with them, especially if the kids are small. Other women don't, but usually their kids are teenagers. Of course, you're not going to do it, but contemplating a plan of escape is an imaginary mechanism to let off steam from life's pressure cooker. No more overdue bills, arguments over cooking, cleaning, carrying out the garbage, charge accounts, or custody. No more clashes between children and career. No more exhausting caretaking of an elderly parent. No more responsibility than you can handle in any 24-hour period. When you think you can't take it anymore, a life that revolves around asking customers if they want their eggs scrambled or fried holds a certain appeal. Recently, a 39-year-old woman, the mother of 5 children between the ages of 8 and 16, vanished off the face of the earth not far from where we live. Earlier in the day, she'd been a chaperone on an elementary school field trip. After the class returned to school, she put her daughter on a bus for a basketball game and told her she would walk the short distance home since it was such a beautiful day. She never arrived. Around dinner time, her frantic family called the police and a massive search began, complete with prayer vigils. Of course, everyone feared the worst because for this particular woman to disappear without a trace was completely out of character. She had everything: a Wellesley education, a beautiful family, a lovely home, an extremely comfortable lifestyle, and a perfect marriage to a diplomat. 3 days later, the woman who had everything, but obviously not enough of what she really needed, turned up unharmed, thank heavens, confused by her own conduct and dazed by all the commotion. Here's what happened. As she started for home, she sought a solitary spot to sort some things out. On the spur of the moment, she walked a few miles to her favorite place, Washington's National Cathedral, an exquisite sanctuary. In the silence, she could hear herself think. After a few hours, she could not bring herself to leave its peace to return to the chaos engulfing her at home. So she slept for 2 days in a small chapel. As of this writing, she's still not returned home, and no one really knows when or if she will. This much we do know. For whatever reason, her heart was rent. Her center could not hold. Her life was not, after all, as perfect as it appeared. Real lives seldom are, even if the surface has a pretty sheen. I only wish I'd been able to say her, disappear if you must, but phone home and let the children know you're okay. When I heard on the radio that she hadn't been abducted, but had voluntarily vanished, I felt a tremendous sense of relief and said as much to my husband. His response was that this woman was obviously mentally unstable, unbalanced. There was no other explanation for her bizarre behavior. I agreed that the weight of her life was too heavy to carry alone. But as I had a meditation to write on coping with stress, I chose not to challenge his interpretation. A long conversational detour would have been necessary to point out that under her particular circumstances, which of course we did not know, her disappearing act might have been extremely sane. Desperate, no doubt, heartrending, no question, but not necessarily crazy. I think more and more of us are understanding this conversation, and you don't have to be female to do it. I think everyone is feeling so maxed in pressure. And I mean, I can't even imagine with 5 kids. I know when I had 1 stepson at the time and a big professional career in coaching and doing all these things, and you feel so demanding. And I would constantly fantasize about escaping, and I couldn't figure out what that was. Everything's supposed to be perfect. What's wrong with me? And I think we can even internalize this and think we're crazy. And I understand now much more clearly why I chose to leave all that, and maybe it wasn't graceful and a little bit I'm sure cuckoo, right? We interpret these things as crazy when we look at them, but the truth is, it is very sane. It is a very sane thing to not want to live this crazy life where we feel constantly maxed and constantly lost. And anyway, I really feel that woman's journey, but ideally we want to do it before we get too far in. We don't want to necessarily impact other people. And I think so many people feel trapped where they are. And how do we create this sense of release and freedom without having to do what this woman did, right? Because she obviously felt very trapped. She was in a prison of sorts. She needed freedom, and she had to do it in a really desperate way. And I can relate to that, but I think there's a different way. So let's keep going. When our waitress fantasy surfaces, we're physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually exhausted by the struggle within and without that pulls us in 100 different directions. Here's the piece. You can't enjoy the journey when you're exhausted. And it's important to point out the struggle within here too. Obviously, it's easy to identify the struggle without, but it's the struggle within that I believe is really what's tearing us apart. We're seriously wounded by the ancient enmity between daily life and the great work, which is capitalized. Band-aids don't work anymore. And the great work would be our internal journey, right? What we're doing here, our spiritual journey. But you don't have time for that when you're this busy. Actually, the fantasy of running away can be very therapeutic because it waves a psychic red flag that tells us real life has become unmanageable. Changes need to occur. Creative choices need to be made. Conversations need to be started and finished. If the fantasy persists to the point of action, asking for help is much better than buying a one-way ticket. If you knew how often I say to myself, to hell with everything, to hell with everybody, I've done my share, let the others do theirs now, enough, enough, enough. Golda Meir, the only Prime Minister of Israel, once confessed candidly. You won't have to run away if you can learn to just say enough, 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 and mean it. There's a shift here that gets to happen for everyone, but I do feel there is a special message in it too for women, in the sense of we're trying to be everything to everyone. Now we're supposed to have kids. Now you're also supposed to make money. I have so many friends who are the main breadwinner of their family and also have small children. And women and men are programmed differently. We do want to be home, especially when you have toddlers and small children. And so causing this huge rift, and then all of a sudden I'm also supposed to work out and look good, and I'm supposed to, be of service and do all of these things. It's not realistic. And don't we want to also be happy? We're going to go to the Vortex now to see if we can find a solution. This will be the last one, but I think it's really about how we manage it, but we do also have to be willing to let the changes occur that come when we shift how we manage it. So this says contrast really isn't about something going wrong. And in this sort of thought process, contrast is having experiences that we don't like. So that woman would have been in a lot of contrast. She would have created an asking from her life experiences, and she ended up getting what she was asking for, but perhaps not in the most effective way. So let's see. We want you to reach the place where you are willing. No, not just willing, determined. Not just determined, eager. To let go of the need of control of things that are uncontrollable, like what anyone else is doing, and give your undivided attention to the only thing you can control, which is how you feel in any given circumstance. In other words, we want you to leave this gathering saying, I've decided that I'm going to take life as it comes, and I'm going to do the best that I can do in the midst of what I'm doing. This reminds me of the serenity prayer, which is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think the biggest point here is that when we are trying to control things we cannot control, including other people, our children, jobs, all of this chaos, we are going to feel powerless. That's down here at the very bottom of the vibrational scale, powerlessness. And if we spend too long down there, it leads to anxiety, depression, despair. So all the way up here, we've got empowerment. So how do you get empowered? You place your control or your power on things that you can control. And what can you control? Well, it's only how, give your undivided attention to the only thing you can control, which is how you feel in any given circumstance, my reaction to it. That's how I'm going to feel empowered, when I'm focused there, when I'm focused on how I feel, when I'm focusing on things that make me feel good so I can feel good, and withdrawing my focus from things I can't control that don't make me feel good. I love that this gives us like a practical solution to the problem. So my goal here was to kind of establish the problem and then get into what actually can we do about it, or be, or think. Nothing ever goes wrong, because every piece of contrast, no matter how wrong it seems to be, is always helping you to clarify what it is you do want. And that's the thing that we want you to remember most of all. The contrast, no matter how it looks in any moment, is contributing mightily to your expansion. And I love that. I think that's so positive to think, okay, the difficult things that I'm going through are helping and serving me, as long as I don't focus on them too long or stay there. And the things that you call things going wrong in your life experience are actually only the distance between the things that are so right and your current perspective about it. So this is giving us our power back. It is my perspective about what's going on that is the problem. And that's great news, because I can do something about that. I can make it something that serves me rather than something that holds me back. I get to take ownership, right? I have to take accountability for how I'm viewing things. But since it's something that I have power over and it's in my mind, that's great news. And it's harder than it sounds. This is what I'm really trying to do. I mean, people will meet me and they'll be like, Emily, you're so positive all the time. But I'm like, not really. I'm finding more and more through this work that I have a negative inclination. And of course, it comes from family and culture and blah, 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 blah. And that doesn't matter, because I let other people influence me into that. And now I'm really focusing on getting a more positive inclination, but I feel the pull. I feel this natural inclination to be negative or see the problem. And so this isn't as easy as it sounds, but I still have the power over it. It's something that I can do. And so it's about discipline. It is about focusing. It's not just going to happen overnight, but at least I have the solution. Isn't that exciting? And I have the power to do something about it. In other words, if you could just accept that you have amassed a huge vibrational fortune that is ready for you to begin tapping into immediately, and all that is required in order to tap into it is a willingness to look in the direction of what you want, which will cause you to no longer look in the direction of what you don't want, life will begin to get better for you right now. So even feeling super overwhelmed like this woman was, rather than looking at all the problems and all the things going on, if she had looked at what was going right and what she wanted and created that space, everything would have shifted in a way to give her what she needed while she was exactly where she was. She wouldn't have had to move and erase everything from her life in order to get what she wanted. And that is our strongest message to you. Life is supposed to be good for you. You live, whether you know it or not, you live as the full recipients of a hurricane of grace. Living in Florida for 8 years and having hurricanes dancing across the ocean right now, I think that is such a great metaphor, because they are so big and so powerful. So there's a hurricane of grace that is flowing towards you at all times in answer to all that you've been asking for. It's a relief. Not one of you has been separated out as one who should not be the receiver of it. So we're all equal. Everyone is equal in this way. Everyone has the same opportunity for abundance and grace as everyone else, which is also something I love. I don't have to worry about being more favored than another person. All of you are in the full flow of this hurricane of well-being. And as you understand that and you begin to stand up with an attitude of willingness to receive the benefit of this well-being and worthiness that is flowing to you at all times, and as you just get a whiff of that, and the best way to get a whiff of it is to stand right where you are, so we don't need to run away, right now, we don't need it to be tomorrow, and do your best to find the best of the positive aspects that surround you. It gives us our solution. You don't have to go anywhere, you have to do anything different. You have to look for the best that is in front of you and have the discipline to focus there on the thing that makes you feel best in this moment. If it's my cup and the delicious coffee that's in it, then that is going to get me to everything I want. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to make me feel good. Look for things to appreciate, even if there aren't that many. Look for things to feel good about, even if there are more things to feel bad about. Give your attention as best you can to the best things that are going on in your experience, with the determination to train yourself into the best feeling vibration that you can right here and now. So it's not about feeling off the charts great in each moment. It's about feeling the best we can in each moment. Today, it says, like speaking from our perspective, today, no matter where I'm going, no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm doing it with, it is my dominant intent to look for and find things that feel good when I see them. It is helpful to say this. If you can say it into a mirror, even more powerful is because we're setting intention. When I hear them, when I smell them, when I taste them, when I touch them, it is my dominant intent to solicit, experience, and exaggerate and talk about and revel in the best of what I see around me here and now. That's all it is. It's that simple. But it also isn't easy at first, I'm finding, but it is simple, right? If I'm eating the ice cream, am I thinking about a million things? Am I looking at my phone? Am I looking at TV? Or am I thinking about somewhere else in my head and something I need to write or do or ticking off a task? Or am I really enjoying the ice cream that I'm eating and getting all of the good feelings I could have from eating it? It's really simple. It has to do with being present in the moment and being focused. As that is your mantra, you will tune yourself to the best vibration that you can reach for. And then the best, and then the best, and then the best, and then the best. And then before you know it, you'll be vibrating in the vicinity of what's really going on in your vibrational escrow, in your vibrational reality. So this is all a feel-good game. And this, I realize, is what I'm practicing through this. This is what is expanding my joy and this experience so much. And this is what I'm looking to get down as a practice before I start adding in all the other things, so that I can really focus here, so I can see the things that pull me away from it and get my footing and my foundation in focusing on what's in front of me and what makes me feel good and what makes me feel happy in each moment. But we don't have to scrub the plate clean. We don't have to clean slate it to do this. But when you have more going on in your life, it is going to take more discipline and focus. But to really stay focused on the things that feel good and just not on the bad, and let go of, first I judged myself. Shouldn't I be looking at the hurricane? Shouldn't I be looking at the news? Shouldn't I be looking at, and being like, no, the most important thing is that I learn how to look at and feel good. I made a post, for example, on Nextdoor a couple days ago, because it's always about crime and, stolen cars and all sorts of negative topics on there. And I just love living here. And so I just got in this happy pace and I made this post, because it's not good to do it from a place of conflict with the negativity, I know, or faking it. So I really got to a place of just how much I love it here. And I made this post about how much I love it here and appreciate it. And so many folks had positive feedback, but there was one comment where a lady was like, I don't see any good big yards. All the yards are really small and just have ruts around them. And the way she said it was so interesting. And I was able to really get where she was at, because I can look at something and see what's beautiful, and someone else can look at the exact same thing and see it as being wrong or bad. This all has to do with our perspective of where we're at. And so I can now start to train myself to look at something and see what's good and right and feel good about it. And I love the contrast of someone who can look at the same thing and see what's wrong about and remind me and show me and continue to educate me about how simply this is a matter of perspective and where our mindset is. So looking at the time, I'm going to engage in that time pressure conversation. Maybe this went on too long, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm just going to trust the process, that that's just not important. And that this message, hilariously, is about not focusing on those things and just loving it and enjoying the flow of the process. And so I get to let go of that and love what it is and love the creation for what it is, and giggle a little bit about seeing the clarity of my own scarcity conversation there, and appreciating that there's an asking in there to let it go. And I know that that's what's happening. So anyway, have a blessed, beautiful day, and see you again another time.